Our wedding was only 2 weeks away when Lily and I had a major fallout. She insisted that I make significant compromises, revealing that she wanted to have a child with her mentor's son. Her proposal was to proceed with IVF, emphasizing that it didn't carry any particular implications. Her mentor was gravely ill, and his deepest wish was to see the Smith family continue his legacy. I was left speechless. With just 2 weeks remaining until our wedding, she was suggesting having a baby with someone else. Didn't that seem ridiculous? To my astonishment, she lashed out at me for being unsympathetic, accusing me of not being able to honor the old man's final wish. With that, she firmly shut the door and left. I watched her go and then shared a post on my social media. I wrote, "Wedding in 2 weeks, seeking a new bride. Serious inquiries only." I sat on the sofa noticing that most comments were friends joking about the situation. After all, everyone knew how deeply I loved Lily. Someone wouldn't believe I was nearly losing myself over this. No one would think I'd abandon her right before our wedding after 3 years of pursuing her. I had finally become her boyfriend and even proposed on my 27th birthday, believing that all my efforts were about to pay off. But then Lily delivered the unexpected blow. She wanted to have a child with another man. I'm not exactly the most generous person, but my love for Lily had humbled me so much that she believed I was magnanimous enough to let her go for someone else. I sat on the sofa, dazed, when the sharp ringtone of my phone shattered the silence. It was Sophia, a childhood friend I hadn't spoken to in years. Reflecting on it, Sophia had always been by my side when we were young, earning jokes about being my little shadow. As we grew older, she became distant and was often described as an unattainable beauty. Despite her aloofness, she never tired of listening to my endless ramblings. After the college entrance exams, Sophia moved to the capital while I went to Haicheng. Later, I met Lily and fell deeply in love. I pursued her relentlessly, not even returning to B City for years. So, when Sophia called, I was caught off guard. Before I could respond, her cold voice asked, "Is what you said true?" I hesitated, trying to understand her reference. Glancing at a photo of Lily and me on the wall, I confirmed, "Yes, it's true." She laughed softly, a hint of satisfaction in her tone, and said, "If you don't mind, consider me an option." A gust of wind blew through the slightly open balcony door, lifting the thin curtain and partially covering the bird of paradise plant in the corner. I replied, "All right, what are your conditions?" Sophia was a lawyer from the Smith family, which had been in business for generations. Naturally, she approached this with a business mindset. I doubted she had no hidden motives. She stated, "I'll send you a prenuptial agreement tomorrow." As expected, I knew Sophia wouldn't agree to a deal that wasn't beneficial for her. She paused and added, "Also, Ethan, I hope you can change my contact name to wife." Confused, I instinctively pulled the phone away, wondering if Sophia had lost her mind. It had been years since we last spoke, and I couldn't fathom how she had changed. She continued, "Ethan, this is the first step towards your new life." Sophia seemed to understand my predicament better than I did. She knew my relationship with Lily was falling apart and recognized that I was clinging to her as a lifeline to escape an unhealthy situation. I asked, "Is there anything else?" My grip on the phone tightened involuntarily. She replied, "Ethan, I need a normal marriage." Her voice was soft, almost alluring. She must have anticipated my next question because she responded before I could ask. "What I mean is, I need you to fulfill all the duties of a husband. Not just to be my husband, but also the father of our child. Even if your family pressures you, I don't want our marriage to be emotionless, like that of roommates." I stood up and drew back the white sheer curtain from the bird of paradise plant, gazing out at the setting sun. I calmly responded, "Sophia, if we're getting married, I don't plan on pretending." She replied, "In that case, I'll come to Haicheng to pick you up tomorrow." I answered, "Give me 2 weeks. Some things need to be settled first." After hanging up, I changed Sophia's contact name to wife. As she had said, this was my first step toward escaping my current relationship. Lily hadn't returned yet. Actually, she hadn't been back for several days. If it were before, I would have tirelessly called her, asking where she was and when she'd come home. But now I couldn't care less. No matter where she was, it was obvious she wasn't coming back. I contacted a few mutual friends to retrieve the wedding invitations. They were surprised because Lily didn't want a large wedding, but I stubbornly wrote the invitations almost as a ritual. I stuffed the invitations back into my bag, feeling gloomy. I didn't want to hide anything from anyone, so I truthfully told them, well, the bride has changed, so the wedding invitations need to be redone. They didn't seem very surprised, only laughing and teasing me. Clearly, they didn't take me seriously. In retrospect, it made sense. I had loved Lily so much, never caring about her coldness. If someone else had made the same decision, I probably wouldn't have believed it either. But that's fine. I'll prove with my actions that I've truly let go this time. I retrieved all the invitations I had sent out. Before long, Lily returned home. She was always particular about neatness, but the white dress she wore now had some wrinkles. Her eyes were bloodshot and she looked exhausted. I could immediately tell she was in a bad state. She looked at me, and her first words matched the decision I had just made. You should recall all the wedding invitations we sent out. My teacher passed away, and I need to observe mourning for at least 6 months, so I can't get married. When she said this, Lily probably thought I would be furious. After all, I had been urging our marriage, and I knew my grandfather had been eagerly waiting for me to get married. So I must have been anxious too. She might have had a retort ready, but I calmly said, I understand. My condolences. She continued, the memorial service for my teacher is today. Will you accompany me to pay our respects? He always wanted to meet you. I paused as I washed a cup. Although I didn't particularly like Makoto, his father was a highly respected professor, and I had met him briefly. The old man exuded a sage-like grace. Sometimes, I didn't understand how such a kind and elegant person could have a son like Makoto. The deceased was gone, and it wouldn't hurt to offer him a flower. I dried my hands, grabbed a black coat from the wardrobe, took my bag, and left with Lily, who was already prepared. Mr. Smith was indeed a respected figure, and the morning hall was filled with many people. Makoto, supporting his mother, thanked those who came to pay their respects. When he saw Lily, Makoto immediately let go of his mother, stepped forward, and grabbed Lily's hand, tears streaming down his face. By the end, he almost collapsed, and Lily rushed to support him, comforting him. She said to me, I'll stay here with him. You can go ahead. I nodded and walked alone to Mr. Smith's portrait, bowed 3 times, and approached the pale-faced elderly woman standing aside. Mrs. Smith, my condolences. She wiped her tears and took my hand, nodding as she said, You're Lily's boyfriend, right? Thank you for coming to see old Smith. I heard you were supposed to get married, but Lily is a kind and devoted girl. She insisted on observing mourning for 6 months on behalf of her teacher. It must have been tough for you. I listened quietly, my heart a mix of emotions, but I didn't respond. I didn't mention the absurd situation between Lily and Makoto, but Mrs. Smith seemed to sense something from my eyes and sighed deeply. Lily. We practically watched her grow up. Old Smith was her mentor. From university through her master's and doctorate, she always held him in high regard. She's a person who values emotions, which is why she made this decision. I hope you won't hold it against her. Her words carried a hint of pleading. I forced a smile and replied, I understand her decision. After all, the bride had already changed, so blaming her would be meaningless now. She nodded and added, Don't mind Makoto. Even though he's always been very close to Lily, I can tell she doesn't feel that way about him. She actually likes you. My heart skipped a beat as I looked at Mrs. Smith in disbelief. Likes me? I repeated, trying to read something in her eyes. Seeing my reaction, Mrs. Smith quickly explained, Child, I'm not lying. Old Smith and I always thought she was too immersed in books to have feelings for anyone, but since you came into her life, she often mentions you in front of us. Whether it's bumping into you somewhere or something you did for her, like cooking something delicious or doing something silly to win her over, it might sound like complaining, but we all know it's just her way of showing love without realizing it. I listened to Mrs. Smith's words, my heart swirling with mixed emotions. In the past, hearing this would have made me happy and satisfied, but now I felt a bitter sense of irony. If Lily truly loved me, why had I never felt her sincerity? If she loved me, why was she willing to have a child with another man? I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. From the moment she agreed to have a child with Makoto, our relationship was destined to fail. As the last student of Mr. Smith, Lily was also the last to leave. Standing at the funeral home's door, I saw Makoto's car parked in front of me. He rolled down the window, and I saw Lily in the front passenger seat, while Mrs. Smith sat in the back with an apologetic look. Makoto, his eyes red, said, "We want to go to the cemetery first to visit Dad." I frowned, about to get into the car, but he stopped me. "Mr. Ethan," he said, "I mean just me, Lily, and my mom." Mrs. Smith frowned. "Makoto." Before she could finish, Makoto, visibly in pain, added, "Dad's gone. I just want my closest people to be with me while I talk to him. Is that too much to ask?" Lily interrupted. "Ethan, could you wait for me a bit? I'll come back after we visit the cemetery." Without waiting for my response, Makoto closed the window and drove off without looking back. I smiled bitterly. I had known this all along. Lily always prioritized Makoto above everything. I waited at the funeral home for 2 hours, and as the sun began to set, the security guard kindly asked if I was waiting for someone. It was then I realized Lily wouldn't be coming back today. The funeral home was located in the suburbs, making it hard to get a cab. I stared at the page where no one was accepting the ride request and finally sighed in resignation as I walked out. It had been sunny earlier, but halfway down the road, the sky suddenly opened up with a torrential downpour. Turning back wasn't an option, so I had no choice but to continue toward the mountain's base. After a while, I finally managed to hail a cab. By the time I returned to the apartment, I felt lightheaded and weak. I hastily took a hot shower, squatted by the TV cabinet to search for fever medicine, then collapsed onto the bed, wrapping myself tightly in the blankets. I slept fitfully, waking up several times in the middle of the night. My dreams were strange and surreal. I felt like I dreamt of many things, but when I woke up, I couldn't remember them clearly. After swallowing some cold medicine, Sophia opened the door and walked in. She didn't even look at me, heading straight to the bedroom. A moment later, she came out, pushing a suitcase. She said, "Hiro hasn't been doing well lately, so I'm going to stay with him for a few days. If you need anything, just call me." Without waiting for a response, she opened the door and left. She never noticed my pale face from the fever. I stayed home for 2 days, then wrote my resignation letter. On Friday morning, I went to the office. My supervisor subtly asked if it was about the salary, but I shook my head and just said I needed to go back home. The supervisor asked, "So you and your girlfriend will be in a long-distance relationship from now on?" Holding the resignation letter from HR, I shook my head and said, "No, we're breaking up. I need to go back to get married." With a surprised look from HR, I walked out of the place I had worked at for 4 years. When I got home, I saw Makoto in the living room, which was a surprise. Sophia, seeing me holding the suitcase, was clearly startled. She blurted out, "What's this?" I remained calm and quickly made up a reason, showing no sign of nervousness. I said, the company relocated to a new address, so I just moved my stuff back for now." She asked, "Where did it move to?" Sophia furrowed her brows, and just as I was about to answer, Makoto suddenly interrupted. He said, "Ethan, my dad passed away recently, and I've been really down. I've probably done some stupid things, like suggesting having a kid with Lily. Looking back, it seems ridiculous, but honestly, there's nothing between Lily and me. Now that my dad's gone, I don't even want to have kids anymore. I'm sorry, I hope you're not upset about it." He put on a look of utter grief. If I hadn't already seen the screenshot of that provocative chat, I might have actually believed his act, but now I couldn't be bothered to call out his little tricks. I just nodded lightly and carried the suitcase back to my room. As soon as I got everything settled in the room, my phone rang at the most inconvenient moment, and the sound was coming from the living room. It was then that I realized I had left my phone there. Just as I was about to go out to get it, the door suddenly swung open and Sophia stood there looking furious. She was holding my phone in her hand, her gaze fixed on me. She asked, "Who's the wife saved in your phone?" I snatched my phone from Sophia's hand, casually dismissing the situation. "It's nothing, just a friend. I was joking with the nickname." Then, with her suspicious gaze still on me, I walked out onto the balcony. I didn't understand why Sophia was calling me at this time. I asked, "Is there something wrong?" On the other end of the line, I could hear the sound of a cup clinking against the wall. Sophia's voice was a bit tired. She said, "No, just feeling a bit worn out." I wanted to hear your voice. Also, I wanted to ask, have you looked over the prenup yet? Honestly, Sophia's prenup was incredible. A senior from law school told me, Sophia must have lost her mind to send you this. I took a close look at the terms and realized that if, in the future, I thought she wasn't fulfilling her marital duties properly, half of her assets would go to me upon divorce. The things I couldn't get from Lily seemed to be slowly coming to me from Sophia. I said, "I have no objections. But why would you want to give me half of your assets?" Sophia chuckled lightly. "It's nothing. I just want to give you the best I can." Suddenly, I didn't feel so bad about breaking up with Lily. She continued, "Once I get back to B-City, let's sign it." All right. After hanging up, when I returned to the living room, Sophia was frowning as she looked at me. She asked, "All done with your call?" I nodded and turned to head toward the kitchen. She said, "Next time, don't nickname your friends as wife. It's not good." I turned back to look at her and suddenly laughed. I didn't understand why Sophia had the position to lecture me, especially when she and Makoto had been far more inappropriate than my harmless wife label. I was about to reply when Makoto suddenly spoke up. He said, "Ethan, Sophia, I'll treat you both to a meal as an apology for disturbing you these days." Makoto's restaurant choice was known for its seafood dishes, but when I looked at the table piled high with seafood, I didn't know where to start. Makoto, however, innocently looked at me and said, "Ethan, aren't you eating? This is their specialty." Sophia added, "He's allergic to seafood." She placed a scallop in Makoto's bowl, but didn't dare look up at me. I couldn't help but sneer inwardly. So she knew I was allergic to seafood, but was still accommodating Makoto. Makoto apologized. Sorry, Ethan. I didn't know you were allergic to seafood. What should we do now? The dishes have already been served." I silently mocked him inside, but didn't respond. I waved to the waiter and ordered a dish of stir-fried vegetables and beef stew for myself. After the meal, Makoto suggested going to a movie, but I had lost interest. I waved my hand and said, "You guys go ahead. I've got some work at the company, need to work overtime," without waiting for Sophia to call after me. I entered the elevator. When I returned to the apartment, I found that our wedding photos had been delivered. Suddenly, I felt uninterested, so I threw them all into a nearby box and began tidying up my things. As I cleaned, I realized something. Over the years, I had been the one giving Sophia gifts, but she had hardly given me anything, not even enough to fill a single box. I threw the box of things, along with the wedding photos, into the trash bin by the community gate. Tomorrow, they'd be taken away by the garbage truck. On my way back, I saw that Makoto had posted a collage of 9 photos on his social media, one of which showed him and Sophia standing in front of a claw machine, their backs to the camera. The caption read, "Thanks to my adorable junior for accompanying me." I smiled and gave his post a like. He probably thought this would still get a reaction out of me, but the truth was, I no longer cared about Sophia. Before I could put my phone down, Anna's message came through, a screenshot of an order confirmation. She said, "Ethan, I've booked you a flight back to B-City for 2 p.m. tomorrow. In 2 weeks, I'll be waiting for you at the airport." Lily didn't return until the next day, just before noon. At that time, I was in the study, organizing my things. Everything I didn't need went into the shredder. Lily seemed to feel guilty, and her attitude toward me had softened. She asked, "Ethan, there's been so much going on these days. Today, I'll stay with you. What do you want to eat? I'll make it for you. How about sweet and sour ribs, dried shrimp, and winter melon soup? Or should I add some stir-fried vegetables and mapo tofu?" As she spoke, Lily rolled up her sleeves and tied on an apron. Heading into the kitchen, it became clear that Lily was a very good cook. Over the years, she had been busy with work, and I had always been the one cooking. Over time, I had forgotten that Lily could cook well and take care of others. I let her handle it, treating this meal as a farewell dinner between us. I turned and went back to the bedroom to continue packing. When I came out with my suitcase, Lily had already set the table with 3 dishes and 1 soup. She was quick. When she saw my suitcase, there was a hint of surprise in her eyes. She asked, "Are you going on a business trip?" I didn't answer her, just rolled up my sleeves and said, "Let's eat first. Afterward, I have something to tell you." She replied, "Okay, we'll eat first. Afterward, I'll take you to the airport. What time is your flight?" She placed a piece of rib in my bowl. It had been so long since I had tasted Lily's cooking that I forgot why I had fallen for her in the first place. After I had a high fever, she stayed by my side and even made me a bowl of lean meat porridge. That taste, I would never forget. After finishing the meal, Lily looked at me, resting her chin on her hand, waiting for me to speak. I finished the last sip of soup, put down the bowl, and wiped my mouth. Lily. But the next second, her phone rang. She picked it up and looked at the screen. It was Makoto. She said, "Sorry, Ethan, just wait a moment." For the first time, I wanted to stubbornly tell her that I was leaving for B-City. I furrowed my brows and said, "Lily, can you just listen to me for once?" On the other end of the line, I heard Makoto's voice, filled with sorrow. "Lily, I dreamt of my dad again. I miss him so much. Do you think he's lonely over there? I want to go find him." Listening to Lily patiently comfort him, I suddenly lost interest. Why waste my time on this? It made me realize that not only was Makoto a good actor, but he was also completely devoid of morals, using the death of his own father as a tool to win over women. "Ethan." Lily hung up the phone and looked at me with a guilty expression, calling my name. I waved my hand and said, "You can go." She seemed relieved and went to the bedroom to grab her coat. Then she kissed me lightly on the lips and said, "Ethan, can we talk when I get back? There would be no later." Lily. I watched her leave and glanced at the messy dinner table. My flight was in 3 hours, so I grabbed my coat and suitcase, planning to head out. When I stood by the entrance, I still went back to the bedroom. I left a note for Lily. It read, "Lily, this is where it ends. I wish you and Hiro a happy family." Before boarding, I saw that Makoto had posted something on his social media. A photo of Lily from behind, wearing an apron. I liked the post and received a message from him. He said, "Ethan, how can you compete with my position in Lily's heart? As soon as I say something, she'll drop everything to be with me. What do you have to offer in this rivalry?" The airport announced my boarding, and I smiled as I typed a reply to Makoto. I wrote, "Yeah, so I'm stepping aside for you. I wish you and Lily a lifetime of happiness. When you get married, make sure to send me an invitation. I'll definitely give you a red envelope." I blocked and deleted him. There was no need to stay in contact with either him or Lily. 3 hours later, I landed in B-City. As I passed through customs, I saw Sophia, dressed in a white coat, standing at the front of the crowd. It had been years, but she looked just the same as before. She handed me a bouquet of lysianthus and said, "Welcome home." I asked, "You remember I like lysianthus?" She pulled my arm, guiding me as we walked. Even though the airport was noisy, I could still hear her clearly. And she said, "I remember everything about you." The strong air conditioning made me flush with warmth. As I sat in Sophia's Porsche Panamera, I finally understood what it meant to have Lee, the lawyer, as an asset. To be honest, neither Sophia nor I were rich kids. We were just a bit better off than average, nothing extravagant. It seemed that Lee, as a partner at the law firm, had indeed made a fortune these past few years. I said, "Sophia, I've actually been meaning to ask you something." I looked out the window at the sunset over the overpass and spoke up. She didn't respond, just nodded for me to continue. I asked, "Why did you agree to my ridiculous request? Don't you think I'm just deceiving you?" I tightened my grip on the seatbelt unconsciously, and I could hear the pounding of my heart. She turned to look at me, her gaze intense, and said, "I thought about it, but even so, I didn't want to give up on that 1% chance. If it's fake, then I'll just let you fool me again. If it's real, then I'll have gained something." Sophia's gaze was gentle, and suddenly, something clicked in my mind. I asked, "Sophia, do you like me?" She let out a soft laugh, reached out, and playfully tapped my arm. Ethan, after all these years, you finally figured it out. The revelation that Sophia liked me shocked me greatly. Honestly, I had never thought that someone like Sophia, who cared so little about anything other than academics, would ever lower her guard for me when we were younger. My parents had joked about me marrying Sophia when I grew up. At that time, I shook my head so hard it felt like a drum in my ears. Sophia, with her clear boundaries with men, was the type who would probably grow old and live alone, never finding someone. Later, I learned the term asexual, and I thought it fit Sophia perfectly. But now she was telling me she liked me. She could read my expression without difficulty, and as she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, she said, "Ethan, haven't you noticed? You're the only one who can stay within 3 meters of me. Haven't you realized that I'm always thinking about you?" I stared at her in disbelief and asked, "What, isn't it because you see me as a brother?" Sophia looked at me with the frustration of someone who felt like I was hopeless. She said, "Ethan, what normal person would want to kiss their brother?" Her words were too blunt, making me feel so awkward. She probably sensed my discomfort, so she stopped teasing me and just saw me home. The Chen and Smith families lived close to each other, so the way back was always the same. In the elevator, we both stood silently, and I tried my best not to disturb the quiet atmosphere. My eyes drifted around, but inevitably glanced at her. I noticed that when I looked at her, her gaze seemed to be subtly watching me too, which made my heart race uncontrollably. The elevator dinged and the doors opened slowly. Sophia stopped at my door, clearly not planning to come inside any further. She said, "All right, I won't go in and interrupt your reunion with Grandpa Chen." I nodded silently and moved my luggage to the side. She let out a soft laugh and said, "Okay, go inside quickly. In a couple of days, I'll come with my parents to discuss our wedding details." Her words made my heart skip again, pounding like a drum. I gave her a playful eye roll, took out my keys, opened the door, and didn't look back or say anything else. But warmth filled my chest as I dragged my suitcase and slowly stepped into the home I hadn't returned to in years. An inexplicable feeling of homesickness rushed over me. The living room was quiet, and the sound of the suitcase wheels scraping across the floor echoed loudly in the empty space. Suddenly, a hurried set of footsteps came from outside, accompanied by Grandpa Chen's strong voice. He clearly thought an intruder had entered. "Who's this thief daring to break into my Chen family's door, Ethan?" Before he could finish his sentence, he saw me standing in the middle of the living room, eyes slightly red. His cane hit the ground with a thud, and Grandpa Chen didn't even care about it. His eyes reddened instantly, and he turned to walk back into the room. I dropped my suitcase and rushed to catch up. Just as Grandpa was about to reach his bed, I quickly grabbed his arm and said, "Grandpa, I missed you?" But Grandpa didn't seem to believe me. After all, when I had told him I was going to study abroad and would return during holidays, he hadn't seen me for years. Although he knew I was coming back recently, he didn't know exactly when it was. Sophia had told him in these 6 years I hadn't called him even once. So he probably thought I had completely forgotten about the old man. Grandpa snorted, trying to pry my hand off, but I held on to him even tighter, tears unknowingly falling onto his shoulder, feeling the wetness on his shoulder. Grandpa sighed and finally stopped struggling, though his words were still harsh. His tone had softened. He said, "You missed me, but you didn't come home for 6 years, leaving me all alone. If it weren't for that Lee girl, you probably wouldn't even know when I die." I quickly interrupted him, my eyes full of disapproval. "Grandpa, you'll live to be 100. Don't say such gloomy things." Remembering Grandpa's words, guilt surged in my heart. I said, "Sorry, Grandpa. It's all my fault. I won't leave again. I'll stay and keep you company." "Okay?" Grandpa shook his head quickly. "What nonsense are you talking about? I'm still waiting for you to get married. Only when I see you happy will I feel at ease to go look for your grandma and your parents." Hearing this, my heart sank further. I knew Grandpa would leave one day, but I still hoped that day would come later, much later. After chatting for a while, the atmosphere slowly eased. Grandpa looked at me with a nostalgic look in his eyes and said, "You've grown up, slimmed down, and changed." I replied, "No matter how much I change, I'll always be Grandpa's grandson." Grandpa patted me on the back, finally calming down. He laughed heartily a few times, then suddenly seemed to remember something about my marriage. His brow furrowed slightly. "Didn't you say you were going to get married? Why did you suddenly come back?" I shook my head, not wanting to talk about it, and said, "She and I weren't a good match, so the wedding was called off." Seeing Grandpa look worried again, I recalled what Sophia had said when she left. After some hesitation, I decided to tell Grandpa the truth. I said, "Sophia said she'll bring her parents to discuss the wedding in a couple of days." Grandpa's eyes widened when he heard this, and it took him a while to react. Then he burst out laughing. "Ha ha ha, that girl waited for you all these years, and it seems like she really got what she wanted." 2 days later, Sophia did come with her parents. The Smith family was sincere, strongly refusing Grandpa's attempts to discuss the dowry. Sophia's mother took my hand and smiled gently. She said, "Don't worry, Grandpa. Ethan and our Sophia will be happy together." I promised Grandpa's mother I'd treat Ethan like my own son. Sophia took out the prenuptial agreement again. She said, "Grandpa, this is for Ethan. I love him, so I want to give him everything I have." I pinched the bridge of my nose, wondering if this was all just a dream. But in the end, after much persuasion, we decided to revise the prenuptial agreement. Looking at Sophia and the Smith family, I finally started to feel relieved that I hadn't married Lily. Grandpa was very pleased with this marriage. Together with the Smith family, they picked a date for us to register for the marriage certificate. In Grandpa's eyes, that red booklet was the most important thing. After Sophia posted about our marriage on social media, I smiled, took a picture of our marriage certificate, and snapped a photo of us holding hands. The wedding ring sparkled in the sunlight. Once the post went up, old friends from the past congratulated me. It wasn't until this moment that they believed I had married someone other than Lily. After getting the marriage certificate, all that was left were the wedding photos and ceremony. I had originally wanted to be more involved, but the Smith family took care of everything. I was only responsible for taking Sophia to try on wedding dresses and offering a few suggestions for the wedding decor. I had asked Sophia why her parents didn't want me involved in the preparations. She had simply nestled into my arms and said, "I want to marry you, so naturally, my family will take care of everything." During this time, Lily had tried to contact me. At first, I would hang up, but later, when it became too much, I changed my phone number and never received any calls from Lily again. The next time I heard from her was 3 days before my wedding with Sophia. On the day of the wedding, Sophia and I left early for the hotel to change into our outfits and have our hair done. Sophia left the task of greeting guests entirely to her parents, while she stayed close to me, not leaving my side. As I watched Sophia in the makeup mirror, I noticed she was staring at me intently, her eyes full of focus. I couldn't help but ask curiously, "Sophia, you've planned everything so thoroughly. You didn't just start getting ready now that I'm back, did you?" She hummed lightly in response, her gaze briefly shifting away. Although Sophia didn't directly answer, the moment she avoided my eyes, I could guess a little bit of the truth. Sophia lifted her head, saw the thoughtful expression on my face, and realized I was overthinking things again. Just then, the makeup artist finished her work, packing up her tools while complimenting Sophia. "Miss Smith, your skin is so good, almost no makeup needed. This has been the easiest bridal makeup I've ever done in my 10+ years of experience." Sophia smiled and thanked her, then stood up, quickly tiptoed, and placed a light kiss on my lips before stepping back. I couldn't help but blush. Sophia gazed at me with satisfaction, a smug smile curling at the corner of her lips. "Of course, who do you think I am? After all, I'm someone's wife." Before she could finish her sentence, I gently tapped her head. "Sophia," I said. She scoffed and teased. "Oh, hubby, are you already going to hit me before we're even married?" She covered her head dramatically, pretending to be in pain. I was startled, thinking I had struck her too hard. Just as I was about to check if she was okay, she pulled me into a hug and pouted. "Hubby, why are you still calling me by my full name?" She acted so pitifully that I couldn't help but roll my eyes. The makeup artist, witnessing our playful banter, couldn't help but laugh. She reminded us to avoid messing up the makeup and left the room, giving us space. We continued our playful exchange for a while until it was almost time for the ceremony. I walked out of the dressing room first. Just then, my phone, which had been in my pocket, suddenly rang. I saw the screen flash with an unknown number. My first instinct was that it was Lily calling, and without thinking, I pressed the hang-up button. However, just moments later, the same number called again. I paused. Not every unknown number had to be Lily. I couldn't let one person make me reject every unfamiliar call. Taking a deep breath, I answered the phone. A voice I didn't recognize came through the speaker. The person asked, "Hello, is this Mr. Ethan Chen?" I hummed in acknowledgement, saying nothing. Planning to listen to what the caller had to say, the voice seemed to sense my hesitation and went straight to the point. "This is the emergency department of B City Hospital. Your girlfriend, Lily, was in a car accident due to speeding. Her condition is critical. Could you come to B City Hospital?" I froze for a moment, and it took me a while to process the meaning of those words. Lily was in B City. She had a car accident because of speeding. The voice on the other end asked, "Hello, Mr. Chen? Are you still there?" The nurse, noticing my prolonged silence, repeated the question, pulling me out of my stupor. I took a deep breath and, in a calm tone, responded, "Sorry, but I'm no longer with her. I'm getting married today, so I really can't find the time to come. Can you contact her other family members or friends?" After saying this, I hung up before the nurse could respond. Although I had a faint suspicion that Lily's arrival in B City might be related to me, as I had just said, we had already broken up, and I no longer had the strength to get involved in her affairs. Besides, she had so many people around her to rely on. She didn't need me. The wedding reception was in full swing, with friends and family filling the entire hall. Sophia, dressed in a long-tailed wedding gown, walked toward me, holding her father's arm with each step. Grandpa had always hoped I'd find someone to spend my life with, but when the day actually came, I found him standing there with red eyes, clearly emotional. I said, "Grandpa, today is a joyous occasion. Why are you crying?" I said this, but seeing Grandpa like that, a wave of emotion surged in my heart. I forced a smile, trying to lighten the atmosphere. "And the new house isn't far from here. Now that we're married, we can visit each other often." Grandpa patted the back of my hand and said, Okay, Grandpa isn't sad anymore." The aisle, which seemed so long, felt like it passed in the blink of an eye. When Sophia and I clasped hands tightly, Grandpa standing by said with a serious tone, "Sophia, you two should love each other, hand in hand, and live together for the rest of your lives." His voice wavered as he spoke, and despite having promised not to cry, his emotions were clearly overwhelming. Time really flew by. Grandpa had grown old. I still remembered the days when I would sit on his lap as a child, listening to his stories. Now I had grown up, ready to get married and have children. Sophia nodded seriously, tightly holding my hand, her eyes full of tenderness and affection. She said, "Grandpa, don't worry. I'll make sure to take good care of Ethan. I won't disappoint you." The vows, exchange of rings, and the kiss in front of friends and family officially made Sophia and me husband and wife. She said, "Ethan, you're finally my husband." 2 months later, I received an invitation. The bride was Lily, and the groom's name was clearly written as Hero. It seemed that, after all, they had ended up together. Lee, the lawyer, emerged from the study, grabbed the invitation from my hand, and frowned as she read it. She asked, "Your ex is getting married?" Seeing the jealous look on her face, I knew exactly what was going on. I laughed and pulled her into my arms. I asked, "Lee, the top lawyer, jealous?" "You and I are legally married. Our relationship is official. Me and Lily? That's already the past." I continued, "Besides, she's now with the love of her life." Lee buried her head in my chest and grumbled for a moment. Then she said, "Fine, I'll go with you." I smiled, seeing her act all awkward. "I wasn't planning on leaving you alone in B City anyway." When Sophia and I sat down, I overheard some gossip. Apparently, Lily was 3 months pregnant. That timeline matched when I was still in Haicheng. They said she wasn't going to pursue IVF anymore, but it was a lie. I couldn't help but sneer. Sophia squeezed my hand tighter. When people saw Sophia and me together, they joked. and I introduced her with a smile. This is my wife, Sophia, the top lawyer. I never imagined that the car accident would leave Lily completely paralyzed, confined to a wheelchair. I heard that her hands were also damaged. As a surgeon, that was worse than death to her. On stage, Makoto asked, "Lily, will you marry me?" But Lily only turned her head, and I had a strange feeling she was looking at me. I ate my food, not even glancing at her. However, in the next second, Sophia suddenly retched. I turned to her and asked, "What's wrong?" She shook her head. "I don't know. I feel a little unwell." Panicking, I took her hand and rushed out, insisting on taking her to the hospital. So I didn't hear Lily's words. "I do, Ethan." After transferring from the emergency room to the obstetrics department, the doctor asked about her last period. That's when Sophia and I realized her period had been delayed by 2 weeks. The doctor asked, "Has this happened before?" His words snapped me out of my daze. Sophia shook her head, stating that although her period had never been particularly punctual, it had never been delayed this much. For caution, the doctor arranged a series of tests. When we received the confirmation report that she was 4 weeks pregnant, Sophia's expression was dazed, as if she couldn't believe it. In the next moment, I excitedly cupped her face and kissed her lips deeply. I said, "Wife, we're having a baby." Seeing my excitement, Sophia's heart filled with joy and excitement as well. She tightly grasped my hand. Tears welled in her eyes as she softly said, "Hubby, you're going to be a dad." I smiled, holding her hand tightly, and said, "Yes, Lee, the top lawyer, you're going to be a mom." When we left the hospital, I received a message from an old friend. They said Lily and Makoto had fought at their wedding. It got really ugly, and they even physically fought. Both of them were sent to the hospital. Lily miscarried. The doctor said she might never be able to have children again, and Makoto, he was stabbed by Lily. He might not survive. I couldn't help but feel a little sentimental. I never imagined that Lily and Makoto would end up like this, but then again, there's an old saying, evil begets evil, and good or bad will eventually be repaid. I intertwined my fingers with Sophia's, and she smiled as she said, "Mr. Chen, I'm hungry. Let's go get some soup dumplings." I smiled and pulled Sophia into my arms. I said, "All right, wife,